Alrighty, well, let's dive straight into it. Thank you for coming to today's webinar on management valuations and P&L reporting. Just to quickly introduce myself, my name is Nick and I'm a part of the customer success team here at Figured. And today what we're going to be covering is a few things. We're going to start by looking at who's using management valuations, who are they for, and how can you use that within Figured. Then we're going to look at an overarching goal. What are we trying to achieve? And then we're going to look at how we're going to put that into action. A part of that's going to be through doing a live demo, and we're going to post through some valuations on the demo account. Then we're also going to look at some of the organization settings and the things that you can set up in order to make management valuations more efficient across your firm. Throughout this whole webinar, if you have any questions, fire them through using the Zoom chat. Otherwise, we'll be having a Q&A right at the end. So just a bit of background on why we've built these management valuations. So a lot of it comes down to the fact that livestock on your balance sheet has this taxable valuation at the end of the year, but that probably doesn't accurately represent things like the market value or the changes in your livestock throughout the year. So we built this management valuations tool to look at the stock on hand in your stock balancer, look at all of the classes and let you assign a value to the per head quantities. Then we'll generate a journal entry which posts it through to zero in order for you to then have an accurate stock on hand account on your balance sheet and on your P&L. This is all about building a more representative report rather than just focusing on those end of year tax valuations, which we have a webinar on, by the way, the 3-step end of year process. We're looking at making sure that we're representative throughout the year and that we have a more accurate on hand value. So the goal is really accurately reporting on the true value of livestock, whether that's the value that you assign. You can have an on-hand value for herd scheme values throughout the year. And it also allows you to represent the births and the deaths and the aging that occurs throughout the year. So you can have a monthly breakdown of that valuation movement. Now, all of this is coming through our integration with Xero. So to start with, it's really important to make sure that your chart of accounts is all set up. So the livestock trackers are using accounts from your chart of accounts, and having them set up and having them regularly used makes it really easy for you to enter in your stock reconciliation. Now, it's that stock rec and making sure that your on-hand values are up to date at the end of each month. That's the thing that's going to be driving all of this. So it's important to keep that up to date. In order to use management valuations fundamentally, though, you need to have these two accounts. One of them is a stock on hand account, which is a current asset, and then a valuation movement account, which is a direct cost. If you want to use Figured with multi-farms and use these management valuations with multi-farms, you'll also need to have that enabled and have your tracking option ready. The benefit, of course, with that is that you don't have to sit there worrying about multiple accounts. You can just have a single stock on hand account, and then when we post through to Xero, we're going to use the right tracking option there. Figured will be posting these as journal entries through to Xero, so you'll have an opportunity to enter in things like narration, and then you can also void them and edit them in Xero too. So the action that we're doing here is we're using the livestock, stock classes, and the quantities to make these journal entries. So we're going to be looking at what's sitting in Figured, creating this calculation, then we're going to look at what's sitting in there in Xero, look at the difference, and then post that through to Xero. That'll mean that your Xero stays up to date, as well as your Figured staying up to date. And remember, at the core of it, all of your actuals will always come through from Xero. So it's important that we keep that up to date. You can also use these management valuations for your forecast and for your budget so that you have an up-to-date expectation and you can run things like your variance report. There is another thing that we're going to look at as well, which is around your organization settings. And it's a neat way to set things like default values for each year for your organization. So if you're an accounting firm, for example, you could have your standard prices for beef cattle. And then when you go through to each of your clients and you do management valuations, you can pull through that standard price so that all of your clients are using similar figures. You'll need admin level access on the organization to set this up. And then by doing this, you can then run that management valuation report, for example, and include that in things like your report pack. So the output of all of this is a whole lot of really handy reports, which you can then share with the rest of your team. So I think the best way to learn about all of this is really just to dive straight into the product. So let's go ahead and do that now. What I've got here is my farm that I've already set up here. It's called Management Valuations. And we're going to look through first at the livestock tracker. So going through to the Operations tab, going through to my Beef Cattle tab here, we can see here's my stock rec for the year. So I've got some actual transactions in there. I've got a purchase for R2 steers. And then I've got my forecast for the rest of the year. So I can see here that I've got a forecasted purchase that's going to be coming in later this year. This stock rec and making sure that your on-hand values are accurate and up to date is what's driving all of this. So it's really important to make sure that you keep all your sales and purchases up to date, as well as doing things like your aging or births and deaths. Then the next thing that we're going to do is go through to our advisor tab here. So you'll need to have Can Edit Plus advisor level access or higher on the farm in order to see this tab. If we go through to that there, we'll then head through to the advisor page, the valuations page. And now we see our different stock trackers. So this is going to look really familiar if you've been using Figured for your end of year reporting. But we're going to just do a few little tweaks here in order to use it for more regular monthly reports. So let's head into my beef cattle settings and take a look. Now, I have mapped my beef cattle on hand account here, that balance sheet account. That's the current asset that we needed to have set up. And then I've got my non-cash movement account, the direct cost set up. Because I'm using my management valuations for my budgets and my forecasts, I also want to see that in my reports too. So I've ticked this option here, Use Management Valuation Movements, Values and Reports. So I've got that tick there, and by clicking Save, that means that when I run things like my P&L or if I run things like my balance sheet, I'll have those forecasted movements sitting in there in the future too. Now that we've set that up and we've reviewed these settings, let's go take a step back and actually go into the management valuation page right here. So there's a few things happening on this page and we're just going to unpack all of that. Starting from the top here, we have our year that we're working in, so the financial year. Then the view that we're looking at, so whether we just want to see our actuals in our forecast or our budget. This is the same as the global date selector across Figured. And then this actuals to field. Now this is the month that you're working in. So if I want to do my management valuation for January, I need to change this to actuals to January and then update that view. If I want to do it for the end of this month, well, at the end of May, we can do that as well, put that in there. And then when you update the view, that'll take whatever the actual on-hand stock values are, and then it'll use that as your source for doing the calculation for the journal entry. Management valuations have two ways of working as well. We have the shared monthly value, or we can have different monthly values, depending on the kind of detail that you want to have in your farm. So we'll see a few large clients, for example, will have these different monthly values. And if we open that up, we can take a look. We can enter in our own custom per head price throughout the year. That allows you to have, say, a different value between April and May, and it gives your reports a lot more detail. Otherwise, what you could do is use your shared monthly values instead, and that just means that we're going to use the same per head value for this year, and that'll be used for calculating against our on-hand values. I've got this button up here, Pull Values from Organization, and that was what we were talking about earlier with those org settings. We can pull it through with the orgs that you have access to and that your farm has access to. So in this one here, I've invited my org CS, and if I click on here, it'll pull through the values that I've already set up in my CS org. If you don't see this coming up, you just need to double check that you've actually invited this farm to your organization so they have access to it. Let's look at how we can set that up, by the way. So if we jump over here, you'll see that I'm in my organization here already CS. We can see that by looking at the organization button here. I'm going to go through to values down at the bottom here and then look at the default values. So this is for every fund that's in my organization, I can pull these figures through. So looking at livestock valuation specifically, and then looking at my beef cattle valuation specifically, I can take a look here and see the values that I've entered in. Now, we haven't got anything in here just yet, so we can start entering that in. But for stock classes that have a corresponding class with the IRD, we'll show you what the current herd scheme price is in there for now. So we can go in and just enter that in, match it up, or enter whatever the per head value you want it to be for your org. We'll just enter that in year by year, and we've got all of these stock classes here. And then if you want to, you can then take that figure and use that for your 2020 year. So at the bottom right-hand corner, or for your next financial year, you'll be able to click that button and then that'll take all of the values you've got currently and then shift them forward to the next financial year. We can choose what year we're in by using this date picker up at the top here, so we can jump between previous and future years. Once we've done that and once we're happy with all of that, we can save that. And then once you've saved it, you'll be able to head back into the management valuation page, pull values from organization, and click on CS here. And then that'll pull through that value that we just used, the 1355. Now, I'm not going to use that figure for now, so let's just go back to what we were originally looking at. So we're going to make sure, first of all, that we pull through our date selected to the right month. I don't want to be doing the valuation for the wrong month, so I'm going to change this actuals to here to April, treating this as if it's the end of this month. And that's something that we see most people doing. They'll go in at the end of the year, end of the month, and they'll post through their management valuations based on that stock record that they would have kept up to date. Now, once we've done that and we're happy with the current on-hand quantity here, and this will show you where we're at the end of April, it'll show you that multiplied by our value per head to give us a total. Now that I'm happy with that, I can save and post this value through to 0. Once it does that, you'll get this review page where we can go through and we can edit that journal before it gets posted through. And then right at the bottom, you'll see also what's currently on hand in 0 and what's this new valuation going to do. So in my example here, we can see that 0 and the valuation total don't match yet, and that's what we're doing by posting this journal entry. You'll see in 0, I have 690,000, whereas my management valuation has calculated this out as 760. That difference here has come through on this journal entry. And once I click Post Manual Journal, that'll then send it through to 0 for us, which means that now 0 will have the up-to-date valuations, and so will Figured. Remember, all of those actuals, they have to come through from 0. If I want to change something other than my actuals, maybe I want to do my forecast, we can pull that across here and change these dates up at the top here too. Now that we've done that though, and now that's syncing through, I reckon it's time for us to take a look at some of the reports. So we've looked at the tool and we've looked at the way we posted this through. And the way we did that was by making sure our stock rec was up to date, heading through to the advisor tab, and then heading through to valuations in that tab. Then we see all of our different stock trackers, and then you can choose to go through to management valuations and see what's sitting in there. If you've got your organization values set up, you can pull through those from there, save them down here. And we also looked at how you can use management valuations between both a shared monthly value and different monthly values, depending on the resolution of information you want. Now that we've done that, and we'll post it through a journal entry to 0, we can do the same thing again. If we've made a change, for example, let's say that now our on-hand quantities are different, I can save and post that journal entry again for this month, and then that'll just make the adjustment as needed. All of these journal entries are sitting in 0 too, so we can go back to 0 and void them if these are incorrect as well. Now that we've done that though, let's go take a look at the consequence of some of this. So let's look at the reports here in Figured. I'm going to take a look at the profit and loss report specifically, just as our start. And remembering that we're operating from the same settings as these global date selectors here, you'll see now that I've got my movements here, and I can see that I've got a non-cash movement here. Let's bring that through to May, just to quickly look at our most up-to-date set of data. We can see here, there's that non-cash movement down there, and if we click on any of these figures here, this will show you any difference between what's sitting in 0 and what's sitting in Figured. So let's take a look at this one, for example. We can see that this is looking at our valuation movement for July, which is the start of my financial year. So it'll show me that last year we closed on this on-hand value of 525, and now in Figured, once you post it through that journal entry, there's the difference. Now that's something important to bear in mind as well, because it could be that there's a non-cash movement in the future, well in this case there is, and that'll show you when there's been a situation that Figured and 0 don't match. So we can use this to review the figures that Figured has calculated, and we can use this to review the value that's sitting on hand in 0. Remember, with all of these reports as well, you can use the additional options to swap between different views, whether you want to see things on a cash or on an accrual basis, whether you want to display this data monthly or annually, and if you want to bring in a comparison, say with your budget to see how that was performing. So that's our profit and loss report as one example of the way we can do things. Let's take a look at the balance sheet as well. And if we take a look at that balance sheet, we'll see here something very similar. So we've got our beef cattle on hand, as well as that valuation movement at the end of April here. And as we go down, we can see their balance sheet showing us a more accurate representation of our livestock on hand. And that's the end goal of all of this. We want to see how much is actually on hand, either monthly or just as a comparison for the year. And we can get all of that by using the management valuations tool and then using things like additional options to bring through extra data. Once you've done that and you're happy with the figures that you've got here, you can then share that report with the rest of your team. Maybe you could save that report, and then once you save it, you're basically taking a snapshot of it, and you can highlight a particular figure and then comment on it. By commenting on this then turns Figured into a collaborative tool that you can share with the rest of your farming team, whether that's with people who are in the farm or people who aren't in the farm. If they aren't in the farm, you can enter in their email address here and they'll receive an invitation just to review this report. And that's a great way to use Figured as a collaborative tool. The other report that I want to show you guys here is the management valuations tool, which is a great complement to something like the end of year valuation livestock trading statement. So this here will show you your current on hand calculation here, so we can see kind of behind the figures, and we can pull this to different months. So we see some firms, for example, they'll run this report to do a comparison with the tax values at the end of the year, and you can share this report and copy it to clipboard in the same way you can do with the livestock trading statement, and then paste that through into Xero, and then have that as a part of the report pack. So there's a lot of flexibility that's in there. But management valuations as a tool really can be this straightforward. It's nice and easy to use. We're just looking to make sure that your stock rec is up to date, as well as your valuation or the values that you want to use. So just as a quick recap, we recommend making sure your stock reconciliation is up to date. Remember that the on-hand values that are sitting in your stock tracker are the ones that are going to be driving these valuations. Use the management valuations tool in the advisor tab in order to access this, and then you can customize your per head values either monthly or as a shared annual value. Post through these valuation journals at the end of the month. That allows you to see a more regular and up-to-date picture of your profit and loss or your balance sheet. And don't forget to share these reports with the rest of your team. Figured really comes alive when you're sharing things and collaborating with the rest of your farming team. Just before we wrap up, I also want to just mention that we do have an enablement team here at Figured. So if you're bringing clients on board, we have resources available in order to help set that up, whether that's training on specific things like management valuations. We have some help docs, and there's also a certification process that covers all of this too. One of the great things with the enablement team is that you can dive straight into a file that has comparative data entered in already. So we can complete your stock reconciliation for the previous year, so you've really got a good starting point for using Figured. Reach out to our team if you're keen to learn more. Generally, we do this enablement for when you're bringing on 10 or more farms, just to make that transition really nice and easy for you. And that takes us to the end of today's webinar for management valuations and P&L reporting. I hope you guys found that really interesting, and next week's webinar is going to be on supercharged reports in Figured, so I look forward to seeing you guys there as well. Same time, same place.